Hey guys, what's going on? It's Blazin here. I'm coming at you with another tier list video. This time it's the final one, right before 9.2. We're sitting on the eve of 9.2, baby. It's the 21st, about to be the 22nd. I'm very excited. Christmas is it's right around the corner, baby. I'm pumped. You should be too. All right, now the video, how it's going to work is it's going to be based for those that are below the top 100 US range, Dratanos, Max. They've already done those videos for like the Race to World First and top 100. So I wanted to touch more on the casual player base and kind of what you should look towards playing in 9.2 that will give you a easy raid spot or a spot that's in the raid that obviously gives you immunity, or something that gives you that kind of cliche, that kind of one up over other classes that will guarantee you kind of that raid spot or classes that are easier to play. And I'll explain based on each class which one you kind of want to lean on and which one gets you an easier raid spot in the raid if it's your first time getting cutting edge, or you're just trying to get 6 out of 10 in Mythic, or you're just trying to get AOTC. Okay, so that's really what this video is for. If you're a top 100 player, go somewhere else. This video is not for you. Okay, so this is for those below the more casual player base. So here we go, guys. Let's kick right off. Let's get it right into it, baby. Here we go. So right off the bat, we're gonna start with the infamous Feral Druid. All right, we're going to jump right into it. Feral Druid, unfortunately, I'm not going to waste my breath talking about this class because it's so bad. I'm just going to put it right here. There's no even really need to explain it. With the nerfs they just received, it's just major swamp It's just major swamp. Like, it's just like, don't play it. All right, here we go. Next, we're going to jump into Boomkin. We'll be doing right to left, working all our way up to Mistweaver being the very last one. All right, here we go. Boomkin. Boomkin right off the bat is going to be S tier. The reason for this is it's going to be very easy for you to find a raid spot in the lower end guilds. There's not very many Boomkins out there in the very lower end guilds. There's very few of them. And with them leaning more going Night Fae, you can easily play Night Fae. It's a little bit easier than Venthyr. You can still play Venthyr, but that Night Fae Boomkin is very viable. And on top of that, you bring Innervate to the raid, which a lot of raid leaders want that. Then on top of that, you also bring Stampeding Roar, which is a great movement speed ability, especially in that lower end guilds if they don't have a druid in general. You're going to get them Innervate and that Stampeding Roar. And any raid leader is going to be seeking that out. So if you are looking to get a guaranteed spot in a raid, definitely look at playing Boomkin. It's a very, very, very viable option. Next, we're going to jump right into the DPS. All right, DPS Shamans. Here we go. We're going to jump right into Elemental. Elemental now. Elemental, unfortunately, with just the way it's been working, the tier set, and with it's kind of like the way it's looking comparing to the other ranged DPS. On its own, it's pretty solid speed tier. But comparing it to what other classes bring, like it doesn't bring the Stampede, doesn't bring Innervate, it doesn't bring what Lock Cookies, it doesn't bring a Warlock Gate, it doesn't bring all these things that other ranged DPS bring. So for that reason, they're going to have to be D tier just because of their lack of raid utility, and lower in guilds, they really are seeking that utility. And their damage profile is just not as high as some of the other classes, and their single target DPS rotation for more casual players a little bit more difficult to understand than playing something like a mage. All right, so for that reason, they are going to be D tier. Next, we're going to jump right off into the Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman is going to go straight into, get this, get ready for it, baby. It is B tier. The reason for this is it is very reliant on the raid composition. If you're by yourself and there's not really many warriors in your raid team, or there's not very many even rogues or just melee in general, it's going to be a little bit lackluster. So for that reason, I am going to be dropping down to a B tier for that, okay? But it really depends on the comp. If you're heavy stacked warriors, you're heavy stacked melee, it can go all the way up to A to possibly S tier. But for the reason and for the lack of enhancement shamans, and it's just going to be that B tier, all right? So next, we're going to jump right off into the Hunters. Survival Hunter, if you're new to the game, it's your first time getting cutting edge, you're joining a guild that hasn't got cutting edge before, they're trying to get cutting edge this tier, Survival Hunter is not going to be the play for you. It's going to be it's just going to be D tier because of the lack of just a lack of knowledge based from it. Usually a survival hunter is someone who plays a rogue or a warrior and then swaps over to a survival hunter. And I just don't see that many players swapping over to that. And hunters that play BM or MM hunter, you're used to playing ranged and then converting over into a survival hunter. It's going to be very rough, especially if you don't have parses and you're trying to join a guild as a survival hunter. You don't have parses from Castle Nathria or even Sanctum. It's going to be really rough on you. For that reason, I'm going to be putting as D tier just because you're just going to have a really rough time joining a guild. And on top of that, their rotations a little bit more difficult than the other melee DPS, and you don't bring any raid utility like warriors and demon hunters, and you don't bring the single target output that a rogue does. So for that reason, for the melee spots, they are very limited in those lower rank guilds, so it's just going to be definitely that D tier, okay? Next is going to be into Marksmanship Hunter. Marksmanship Hunter is instantly going to go into the A tier. They bring Turtle. They bring their Resonate Arrow if you're playing Kyrian, which gives a 5% crit to your group. Also, on top of that, they have a really easy rotation, and they bring Exhilarate in with gear. They with the extra gear that you'll be getting. Compared to the Race to World First guys, you'll have plenty of gear by the time you get to the final boss, so you shouldn't be feeling that squishy, and your damage profile, multi-target, single target is looking fantastic. And with the tier set and the way the double Lego's looking, they're looking very strong. It's a very just viable class. And some guilds, they sometimes even run 4, 5 to even 6 hunters at times in those lower end guilds, just because everyone's playing them. They're out there, they're good, they're solid, they do great damage, and I mean, they're cool. They have guns and bows. All right, next is going to go into Beastmaster. Beastmaster also going to fall right behind there in Marksman, right behind there in the A tier. The reason for that is Beastmaster is literally the easiest DPS spec in the game. You will have you can parse closer to your sims than any other class in the game because you have 100% uptime with the moving, the jumping. You're really flexible. You can go handle mechanics and your pet's still DPSing. Kill commands, instant cast. It's just a very, very nice spec to play. And on top of that, you do bring those immunities. You do bring your extra heal. If a healer's forgetting heal, you just pop up Exhilarate. You have Feign of Death, some mechanics inside a raid. And overall, with the easiness of the rotation, it is definitely going to be A tier for those newer players looking to get cutting edge. I highly suggest you play BM Hunter / Marksman Hunter. Just try and learn both of them simultaneously, and I think you'll be very good. Yes, in general, in your raid, you'll make the raid leader very happy, okay? Next, we're going to jump into Warriors, all right? Warriors, right off the bat, just a DPS, it's just incredible. Both Warriors going to be just straight up in S tier. The reason for this is, lower guilds at times, I mean, I know a few guilds myself that don't even have a battle shout, and now you're bringing it with the Warriors. On top of that, you bring Rally, which is just... I mean, it's insane. It's incredible. And then on top of it, with the tier set, the double Legos on both of them, they're looking like to be one of the best single target DPSs in the game. And in combination with the Enhancement Shaman, it's just incredible. I mean, you bring a 40-yard ability that gives stamina to everyone. Plus, you get a chance of getting the Wind Fury buff. You get enhancement in your group that just doubles your damage. Plus, your damage profile and your execute range is incredible. Like... You are literally the best melee DPS in the game. Like, let's just put it right there. I'll be the one who takes all the flame for it, but they are the #1 S tier best DPS in the game. They are the Giga Chads of melee, all right? If you see a warrior walking down the street, you better move out of their way, because, like, you better move out of the way. All right, next we're going to jump into mages, all right? Mages, for those more casual guilds, I'm going to be putting it in S tier for Frost Mage. The reason for this is having the ability of the double ice block, with the cold snap, and the way your abilities cleave, and your cooldown, the way it's set up, and the easiness of the rotation of Frost Mage, it's just very viable. And with guilds needing that intellect buff, I'm guaranteed you're going to be able to find a raid spot playing as Frost Mage. So I highly suggest you pick up Mage overall. Fire Mage is also going to join in the S tier. Fire Mage is looking extremely strong, especially execute range. It does have the cheat deaths. It has ice block. It's once again, it's a mage. It's fantastic, all right? So both of those are going to be S tier. They're very viable. I really suggest you just play mage in general because there's guilds out there that do not have a mage. So if you're looking to get cutting edge, is a very good class to pick up in 9.2 and kind of learn how to play it and find yourself a decent solid rating guild, okay? So Arcane is going to be A tier. It doesn't bring the execute, the cheat deaths, the movement that this Fire Mage has, especially during Scorch. It just doesn't have the same mobility, and so I'll be putting Arcane kind of in A tier compared to the other two, okay? Alright, so next we're going to jump right off into our Warlocks, okay? Warlocks, I'm going to give you, like, pretty much, like, straight up. This is, like, a fire take here. Warlocks are the best, the most tankiest, best range DPS in the game. I know you guys may have watched the max tier list where they put it in A tier. They were like kind of skeptical on kind of placing it. I'll be the guy who tells you straight up how it is, right? It's S tier. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. It is the best range DPS in the game. You can stand in mechanics and be a total bot and still survive. And then you can literally pop your Hellstone and be like, whoo, and look around the raid team. And be like, no one saw anything because you stood in a mechanic, you almost died, but you Hellstone out of it. You look around, you ain't dead, and guess what? You're still pumping, baby. The raid leader never saw it. So for that reason, your ability to stand in mechanics and not die and do like one of the best DPS in the game from ranged, it's just incredible. Plus, on top of that, as a Warlock in general, you bring health cookies and you bring Warlock gates with every raid leader on the planet is like, oh, I lost Warlock gates, baby. That's literally how they are, okay? So, next we're going to jump into Destro. Destro's going to be A tier, a little bit weaker than Demo, but Destro does have a little bit easier rotation, but with the changes to dogs and a little bit, I was talking to my Warlocks a little bit about it, I guess Demo is a little bit easier, so that's why I kept it in S tier. I was actually going to put it down in A tier, but I kept it in S tier because I guess the change of a few abilities. But Destro is going to be that A tier. The reason for this is just because it's a little bit easier rotation. I was thinking about giving it B tier, but I will keep it an A tier because it is just a Warlock and they do decent AoE damage. In some fights, Destro is actually looking pretty good in it. The next one is going to be Affliction Warlock. All right. And I'm going to be a little bit nicer on the Affliction Warlock, okay? I am going to put it in C tier. The reason for this is because, once again, it is a Warlock. And if you play a decent Affliction Warlock, sometimes you can out-DPS the Destro and Demo locks if these guys don't know what they're doing. And in general, there's guilds out there who don't have any Warlocks at all. So you playing a Warlock and giving those health cookies and a Warlock gate to a guild that doesn't have one, it's just a huge bonus. It's a huge plus, and you're guaranteed to get a raid spot. So for those out there looking to get cutting edge this tier, play a Warlock. Like, just straight up play a Warlock and you'll be able to find a raid spot. I promise you. Like, I've seen raids even have... I watched a guild literally, was it 2 nights ago, get cutting edge for the first time on Mythic Sylvanas, and they had like 5 Warlocks. Like, just play a Warlock. They're S tier. They're insane. Like, the class in general is just insane. Alright, so next we're going to jump into S-Priest, alright? Shadow Priest. With the recent nerf they just had, I am going to have to unfortunately put it in B tier. Unlike my previous video, I did have it placed a lot higher. But for newer players, the rotation, it's easy, but it's a little bit difficult. They do bring Massive Spell, they do bring the grips, they bring Fortitude in case you don't have a Holy Priest or a Disc Priest. So for that reason, I am going to be putting it higher, obviously, than these other specs, because of the kind of raid utility they do bring, and they do bring Mass Dispel, and there's encounters that will require it, okay? It's always nice having the extra Mass Dispel. So they're right along there in the range with the Enhancement Shaman, okay? So there's where S-Priest sit. All right, next we're going to jump right into Havoc Demon Hunter. Havoc Demon Hunters, by far, is S tier, all right? And obviously I'll explain when we get down to the tanks of kind of why this is also S tier, also why it's stapled up here. But between Darkness, their ability to be able to single target, AoE cleave while DPSing, and the way their tier set's working, and being able to, like I said before in my previous videos, like double jumping over mechanics, you look cool, you're awesome. It's such a good class to have. And on top of that, with bringing Chaos Brand, especially if your raid doesn't have a Demon Hunter, or like the guild you're applying for doesn't have a Demon Hunter, they will literally pick you up in a heartbeat, even if you're parsing purples and blues, just because they need the Chaos Brand, okay? So if you're looking to get into a cutting edge guild for the first time, or you're just looking to, you're in a guild that's trying to get cutting edge for the first time, I highly suggest you play Havoc Demon Hunter. They're cool, they're fun to look at, and they're very fun to play. They're just amazing, okay? And they're just amazing. All right. So next we're gonna get into the DKs. All right. So for DKs here, let me check my notes real quick. All right. So DKs, it is going to be Frost DK is going to be going into the A tier. For the casual player base, the reason for that is because the rotation a lot easier than Unholy. You don't have to manage so many things, and with the breath kind of build it's looking at, it's looking pretty incredible. And then on top of it, you still bring the grips. In case you don't have that blood DK, you bring grips. You bring the B-Res also. So you bring a lot of raid utility. All right. So if you're looking to get into a raiding guild, DK is definitely a viable pickup. Even if you do decide to play Unholy DK, DK in general is a great pickup. All right. So Unholy DK is going to be B tier. The reason for that is it has the lack of execute compared to Warrior. Warrior is just a better version of DK, and Frost DK is a better version of Unholy DK. So if you are a Unholy DK, it's fine. Anyone who maximizes their spec is obviously going to be good. But if you can kind of lean towards learning Frost DK, I think you'll be a little bit better off just the way they're looking. Though obviously, this is speculation, so we don't know. Maybe Unholy DK gets a buff during Mythic Week, and they climb all the way up to A tier with Frost. Okay, we'll have to keep our eyes on that. But for right now, I'm going to be putting in B tier. All right. So next, we're going to go into Ret Paladin. Ret Paladin, unfortunately, is going to be in the D tier. Just the reason for the Ret Paladin being so far down is I know it brings immunity, it brings the sack, it brings the bot, but the player. Yes, when you're joining a guild, right? A lot of lower end guilds and raid leaders, they don't know how to read logs or kind of understand really classes, or they have a lack of knowledge for Ret Paladin. So like during an interview, if you say, oh yeah, but you know, I sucked the tank when he got low, or I bubbled this guy when he had so many stacks, you know, I clutched up that pull or whatever. It's like, really, if the raid leader is looking at your parses and you're parsing like blues or something, it's gonna be hard to kind of sell your points to get into that guild. It's gonna be hard to sell your point compared to like blue parsing warrior, where you can really just tell them, like, straight up, just tell the guy through the mic, be like, I bring rally, and the guy will literally invite you to the guild instantly and to the raid team. Where Ret Paladin is just, it's kind of hard to sell yourself to the raid leader during an interview, because of just player perception and just the way Ret Paladin has been for such a long time. Like, I know there's guilds out there, there's top 50 US guilds where they're like, oh yeah, we have a Ret Paladin and all that stuff. But for lower end guilds, for casual players, guys, I'll be straight up with you. It is going to be very hard to convince those kind of raid leaders to take you on board unless they don't have an HPAL. If they don't have an HPAL or a Prop Paladin, then they'll pick you up. But I highly doubt they don't have any of those two, okay? So for that reason, I am going to be putting in D tier. It's just the single target, the burst window. I just don't think it's as strong as ARMS, and these guys just bring rally. I mean, personally, I'd rather bring 3 warriors with enhancement shaman than even touch a Ret Paladin. But that's me, all right? So I'm keeping it real with you guys, how it is. I mean, warrior is just incredible. All right, next we're going to jump into Windwalker, right? Windwalker right now is going to be C tier. The only reason this isn't D tier is because it brings Mystic Touch. And for those casual guilds, sometimes you don't have a Brewmaster or a Mistweaver. So for that reason, you are going to be C tier. And you are niche. You do bring a little bit really amazing AoE DPS on some fights where you need to just AoE cleave everything down. And yeah, your single target is trash, but you can keep up a little bit of your single target to just where the Mystic Touch brings enough damage increase to where the raid leader overlooks you, and you can stay in that C spot, okay? I will put a little bit ahead of the Affliction Lock, okay? But really, you should be D tier, but Mystic Touch kind of carries you, all right? And obviously, your Diffuse Magic and kind of your Expel Harm and all the survivability that you bring, it does kind of carry you into that C tier ranking, all right, for those casual players. All right, now, next we're going to jump right into Rogue. Rogue, right off the bat, it is going to be in those B tiers, all right? B tiers. Here it is. The reason for this is, the reason I'm placing these so low, the Rogues in general is so low. I know you guys are going to be, why isn't S tier? Why isn't A tier? What's going on here? The reason for this is because lower in guilds and casual players really struggle playing Rogue. You have a lot of downtime, and on top of that, let's say, I'll be real with you here. Let's say you're a dad, and you raid log, and you do your 115 keystone a week. You don't have very high IO score because you're only doing 115 keystone a week, but you're still just trying to squeeze out your cutting edge by playing 3 to 4 hours a night, right? You're raid logging. You being able to join a guild is probably not even a chance compared to Warlock. You could be a Warlock and be a raid logger and still get cutting edge. Being a Rogue and raid logging is not going to happen because Rogues, they're infamous for doing high-end M+, like Raider IO score. So when you're applying for guilds or anything, you're always competing or to keep your spot since there's only really one Rogue spot. Very rarely you see 2 Rogue spots in a raid, and you almost never see 3 inside a raid. It's always 2 or 1. You're competing against people who are applying for your spot who have like super high IO score. So if you're a casual player, you're raid logger, you're going to lose your raid spot to someone who does a lot of M+, to a Zoomer. Okay, so for that reason, I am going to have to put them in B tier, even though they bring great single target, but just the viability of being able to get into a raid is so low. For casual players, I highly suggest you kind of stay away from Rogues in general, because it's just going to be difficult for you, okay? So I'm also going to be putting Assassination up there in B tier right next to Subtlety. It's just the same situation. It's just there's only one raid spot, okay? So it's kind of doo-doo, all right? So next is Outlaw. Just legitimately, just don't even play Outlaw if you're a casual player. It's so RNG, and it's just bad. It's just don't play with the amount of RNG. You're better off playing one of these two, okay? And the rotation a little bit makes more sense with these two compared to Outlaw. All right, so here we go. That's it for DPS, guys. We're finally done with DPS. Now we're going to jump into tanks. Kind of what tanks you should look at playing. Now keep in mind, casual players, let's say you return to the game, you're coming from Lost Ark, you're coming from Final Fantasy, I highly suggest to you, do not play a tank. Do not play a tank. The reason for this is, tanks are usually either the raid leader, a shot caller, or an officer. So you as a new player, or a returning player, trying to play a tank and get into a guild, and you're a raid logger, you're a casual player, it's just going to be very difficult for you to find that raid spot because of those spots are usually taken by their best friends, officers, raid leaders, that kind of thing. So tanks, reality, you only have one spot that you have to trial for out of 19 other people. So it's very low chances that you find a guild that you can get cutting edge with, because it's very low spots, okay? Very small group that you're trying to work for, all right? But that's pretty much my warning for you guys for tanks. But if you are a tank main out there, you do have a guild, you're looking to get cutting edge for the first time with your guild, these are kind of tanks I kind of suggest playing, and kind of what's the easiest one and kind of the niches of it, all right? Here we go. So right off the bat, we're going to jump into Prot Paladin. Prot Paladin is going to be A tier. It's only going to be A tier if you have a viable off tank or / main tank that's like a Brewmaster or Guardian, or someone who's super tanky that can tank those hard tanking mechanics, and you can kind of focus on keeping the raid alive and just doing your big damage, kind of doing that kind of stuff. That's where your kind of niche comes in. Obviously, you can spell ward, you can negate mechanics, which is really good in casual guilds where, you know, if you're really struggling on a mechanic or it's wiping the raid, you can spell ward it and kind of make the raid easier, or have it to where that guy can run out of the raid and now you can save a healer cooldown, and that's possibly a way that you guys can kill that boss finally if you're not running a Prot Paladin originally, alright? So for that reason, I am be putting Prot Paladin in that A tier. Next, we're going to jump into Guardian Druid. Guardian Druid for its simplicity, survivability, and how much it can just tank and also it has B-Res, and it has Stampeding Roar, and some guilds don't have a B-Res. Some raids don't have a B-Res because they don't have DKs, or maybe they don't have a Boomkin, okay? So, like, having the Guardian Druid bring the B-Res and bring the Stampeding Roar, especially since Guardian Druids have a shorter cooldown Stampeding Roar, it's every minute you can help your raid move around, and for a casual guild, sometimes that's really helpful. It is going to be S tier, okay? It just is going to be, it's very easy to stay alive, it's very simple role. You need help kind of helping people. You have this mechanic, you need to move over here. I highly suggest you play Bear, because you can stay alive, very simple rotation. You can kind of help the raid leader out, or you can kind of signify yourself in the raid by helping shot call kind of stuff, all right? So if you're that kind of off-tank guy who kind of wants to help the raid, I highly suggest you play that Guardian Druid, all right? So next is going to be going into Brewmaster. Brewmaster is obviously going to go up there once again with S tier. The stagger effect, if you do mess up or you're just a bad tank in general, you can survive more mechanics because you can literally stagger it right off of you. And if you do miss your trinket or something, you can literally get pummeled to red stagger and just purify off the stagger. And you look around, make sure no one saw it, and then you're fine. You're still alive. You're still pumping, all right? So for that reason, Brewmaster is definitely going to be up there in S tier. Just as you plug in bosses, you can survive a lot of hits that other tanks can't if they're struggling clicking their DRs and stuff, all right? You can kind of carry the tanking portion of the raid, you know, as a bats or even a good player. You can carry it with the stagger, okay? Next is going to be going into Blood DK. Blood DK is going to go right there, right behind Prot Paladin. The reason for that is kind of niche as well, kind of like the Prot Paladin. It brings grips, which is really good on Anduin. And obviously, if you don't have a DK, Blood DK is definitely going to get a guaranteed invite to the raid team because, you know, they don't have the other two DKs. So for that reason, they are going to be A tier right there with the Prot Paladin, all right? Especially, it's just going to be right there. And their tier says looking phenomenal, and especially with on fights like Anduin where the Necro Lord, Blood DK, being able to grip everything up into a corner, be able to DPS it down so you don't ruin the downstairs phase. It's just going to be very nice, and it's just going to be super helpful, okay? So next is going to go into Vengeance. Vengeance Demon Hunter is going to be B tier. The reason for this is, it's a little bit squishier of a tank than the other ones, but the reason it's so highly placed up here is because it does bring Chaos Brand. Some guilds do not have a Havoc Demon Hunter, like I was talking about earlier, so you would be in that place with that Chaos Brand, okay? You would come in there and give that to the raid, and a lot of raids, Chaos Brand is a huge DPS increase for them, so that's why it's going to be B tier. All right, next is going to be Prot Warrior, excuse me. Prot Warrior is going to be that D tier. The reason it isn't Swamp Ass is because it does bring the Battle Shout and the Rally in case you don't have these Warriors, but I highly doubt it because everyone, their mother's going to be playing Warrior this tier, so literally that's why this is going to stay down here in D tier, because the tier set is just kind of poopy. It doesn't do very much, and it's just, you're better off playing DPS, honestly. Like, you're better off playing the other tanks if you're playing Prot, okay? So, for that reason, they're just going to stay in that D tier. All right, next we're going to jump into healers, guys. So, once again, for healers, this is for easiest to play, kind of what cooldowns you're looking for, what raid leaders kind of lean to, kind of what they enjoy more, and that kind of thing, all right? So let's kick right off into it. Holy Pally is obviously going to be the A tier with the Devotion Aura, and obviously one of the easiest raid cooldowns in the game to use. You know, if your raid team's spread out, things going chaotic, the bosses, you know, it's crazy. You can literally click your Aura Mastery, it hits everyone in the raid, it just does it for you. You don't have to worry about positioning, and it does it. And on top of that, a lot of your healing and your DPS is combined, so you do bring that DPS and the healing increase. So for that reason, it's going to be A tier, and you do bring your immunities, your sacks, your bops. So that is why that's going to be in the A tier, okay, for H-Paladin. I know they got nerfed, but frankly, with how much utility they bring for those casual guilds, it doesn't matter, because having Aura Mastery on some mechanic might save one of those players that forget to click their damage reduction ability, okay? So, and with it being a 40-yard spread, it's fantastic to have, and also it brings Devotion Aura in case you don't have the Prot Paladin or Ret Paladin, okay? So next we're going to jump into Arsham. Arsham by far is obviously going to be S tier. It's just fantastic. You have Ankh. If you die, You have Astro Shift, which is great little DR that you can use. You have Ghost Wolf that gives you a DR and gets you increased movement speed whenever you need to move for a mechanic or get out or you need to move somewhere. You also bring Wind Rush, which helps the entire raid team move. You bring Mana Tide. Like, they just bring such a huge toolkit to where they're just amazing. And then on top of that, they bring Spirit Link, which is in casual guilds. That's the #1 like favorite cooldown in the game. It looks cool. It makes raid leaders get a hard on when they see the little green lions go around and all the raid team's health goes up. It's a great feeling. And then on top of that, they bring Ankh Totem. If there's a mechanic that just keeps killing one of your worst players, you can put down an Ankh Totem and kind of carry that player through the rough parts of the fight with the Ankh Totem. Okay, if you have to run that. And obviously, if you're a bad player yourself, you can literally get killed by a mechanic Ankh, and hopefully the raid leader didn't see you die and he doesn't have, details pulled up to track deaths, and like he'll never know because he doesn't check the raid logs, right? You're safe. All right. So next healer is gonna be Disc Priest. Disc Priest stands for D tier. The reason for this is they are literally just god awful in lower casual guilds. Like, please stay away from this healer. Please play the other ones because it is so bad. Half the time, lower in guilds are getting cutting edge for the first time. Like, they don't really understand ERT nodes. And sometimes they don't even have ERT nodes. A lot of times players don't even know what barrier looks like on the ground. They don't know how to stand in it. Or like they'll stand in barrier, and then a mechanic, a pool will come fly in and kill them. So sometimes your barrier is actually a bait to kill players. Like, it's such a bait. You know what I'm saying? I know there's going to be a few comments, oh, just get better. Unfortunately, sometimes there's guilds who just cannot find enough players to play, right? You just can't recruit enough. So you have to work around your bad players. And then involving a Disc Priest that brings that barrier that just baits your bad players into it, it's just a very rough environment for you. And then on top of that, a lot of casual players, they don't really understand how to do the ramp properly. And with how much you have to work with the other healers, it's just a pain in the butt. And then on top of that, like I know Max had mentioned in his video, a lot of the times the raid works around the Disc Priest, and the Disc Priest plants in a spot, and he like, you sack him or wherever it is so he can do his ramp and everything. Well, in lower end guilds, it's just going to cause so much stress on the raid that's just not needed. You're better off playing other healers. So for that reason, I am going to be putting a D tier because of the raid having to work around you in such a way. Okay. So next is going to be Holy Priest. Holy Priest is actually going to be B tier after their buffs and after they got the buffs to their damage, their healing, Divine Hymn. They're just looking very fantastic healer. They're very, like I said, boomer friendly in my previous video. They're just a nice healer to have. No raid leader is going to complain because guess what? You're filling in that healer spot. You're nice to bring, okay? Plus you bring a Symbol of Hope, kind of regenerate that mana, reduce everyone's DRs. It's a nice healer to have, okay? So for that reason, I'll be putting him in B tier for you. All right, next is going to be Resto Druid. Resto Druid is going to climb all the way into the A spot. For those casual players, they bring HOTS. They bring HOTS on the entire raid. With the buffs they did receive, they climbed hugely up the tier compared to what I had them before. And with them giving innervates to themselves and just being able to pump, them being able to move with Stampeding Roar, and then their survivability with them being able to pop into bear form, bark skin, they can give iron skin. They bring a lot of utility, a lot of survivability for themselves, and then on top of that, they also bring Trank, which in those lower end guilds is a fantastic ability to have when you're just trying to top off your raid after huge damaging ability, or you're trying to work it in cohesion with a rally or something. It works really great, and with the buffs they just received, they are looking phenomenal. I would highly suggest you guys play Resto Druid, especially if you want a multi-class. If you like multi-classing, I highly suggest you play Druid because you can play one of the best range DPS in the game. You can play a really solid tank, and you can play Resto Druid and have a good time. So if you like multi-class, multi-specking, I highly suggest that you play Druid, all right? Because all three specs are very, very solid. Ignore this spec completely, all right? So next we're going to go into the final one, guys. This is going to be for Mistweaver, right? Mistweaver is going to be in that C tier with the nerfs to the double Lego, the way Fallen Order has worked. And Fallen Order and those lower guilds did carry a lot of your healing because you could pop it and kind of watch the health meters go up. And there's a lot less clicking complexity in it. But with the nerf to that, it's just looking a lot weaker than the newly buffed Holy Priest and the Resto Druid. And for that reason, I am going to be putting them, unfortunately, in that C tier, guys, because of the nerfs they did receive. But if they do revert those nerfs, you'll obviously see it climb back up. But with the HOTS from Resto Druid getting buffed and the way Resto Druid's looking, and the utility they bring, it's definitely going to be A tier. It's definitely going to be Mistweaver is just going to stay in that C tier, excuse me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, guys. That is it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this casual kind of tier list. I know it's a little bit different from what the other streamers are doing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this content, a little mix up compared to what you guys are usually used to seeing. If you did enjoy it, please leave that like and click that subscribe button for me. I would deeply appreciate it, and I look forward to playing with all of you tomorrow afternoon in 9.2, baby. Take care, guys. Peace out. Thank you so much for watching. Deep love to all of you. Peace out. Peace.